everyone, my name's Ben. I'm lead educator at Lumenswap and the founder of Boring Crypto. If you like the stuff that I do, give me a subscribe and hit the notification bell. So every time I do a video, you're going to get it delivered to your inbox, or you're certainly going to be notified that I've done one in your email inbox. In this video, I'm going to talk to you a little about liquidity provision. What the hell liquidity provision is, whether it's something for you, and then in the subsequent 5 videos that I'm going to do in this series, we're going to be going into many different areas of LP yield farming and the risks associated with it, so you can make an informed decision come the 3rd of November if this is something that's for you. Right? The thing that we need is education. We need to be educated to say to ourselves, okay, I feel now that I've got adequate information to make a balanced decision if this is something right for me, without aping in and losing your money, or without not getting involved and not making any yield. Okay, I've scoured the internet. I've found a really great article that really summarizes everything that we are going to be doing. So I'm going to read that, but then I'm going to kind of give it my spin, give it my take at the end, so that you can have the article, so you can have the data from the article, and you can also have my take on it before we move into the second of these videos. So this is all about a basic understanding of liquidity provision. So what is liquidity provision? Liquidity provision, often abbreviated as LP, is an allocation of assets pooled on a decentralized exchange, or a DEX, or an SDEX as it is on Stellar, that runs via an automated market maker protocol, and which allows for trading in those assets. So that's like gobbledygook, a load of confusion already right at that first point. So what is it really? I think it's the backbone, right, of DeFi, and it plays a major role in decentralized finance. Yeah, in traditional financial markets, banks and large institutions act as liquidity providers, or also called liquidity provisioners, supplying a pool of capital to allow for trading on an exchange. Basically, if you wanted to create a market for trading apples and bananas, they're using here as an example, you first of all need to gather a lot of apples and bananas so you don't run out of apples if there's a run on bananas, right? So basically, you need lots of both. Putting that into layman's terms, if you go to an exchange such as Binance and you've got BNB trading against Bitcoin, you need to have a whole stack of both. Yeah, a whole stack of both of those in case everyone's going crazy and trying to buy one. You don't want to run out. If we just look at the figures over the space of 2021, we will see that Ethereum or Ether and BTC is being drawn off exchanges at a rapid rate. Yeah, so the holdings, the hodlings, whatever you want to use as terminology, on exchanges is dropping. This is showing us that more and more people are accumulating. If it was going back onto exchanges, then it would be a case of more people are selling out their assets, right? But it's being accumulated. Meaning that if you start looking at that and you look at the on-chain metrics, you start thinking if they are accumulating, the chances are the price is going to follow suit sooner or later. And of course, we have seen all-time highs throughout 2021 that matches this accumulation phase. Right then, in exchange for establishing this pool, liquidity providers typically take a small fee for every transaction, which is how they generate profit. Centralized exchanges, for example, we've got 0.25% maker and taker fee. Sometimes it changes, but that's how they make their profit. Yeah, they make their profit by charging those fees. The great big idea at the heart of decentralized finance is that you, or rather we, all of us, become the market makers. It's distributed, right? Instead of it being centralized, it's distributed to all of us, giving us an opportunity to provide liquidity and to make those fees ourselves. That's it, right? That's the great big idea. If you provide liquidity on Stellar, you will earn 0.3% on each trade proportional to your share of the pool. The more that you put in, so the bigger, the greater share of the assets within that pool that you have, the more of those fees that you will accrue. Yeah, the smaller chunk, the less of the fees. It's very, very simple. Yeah, a very simple process. More you put in, obviously the greater risk that you're taking as well because of the fluctuation price of the assets and so on, but I'll come on to that. People use the shorthand LP interchangeably to describe liquidity provider, i.e. the farmer, their liquidity provision, the fruit, yeah, or the liquidity pool, the basket it goes into. So you've got the liquidity pool, Right, we are liquidity pool providers, LP providers, and then we have liquidity pool tokens. Right, and we put them tokens into the pool to get the yield or the returns, the network fees out. I hope that makes sense. Again, think of the price as a function of supply and demand. If bananas become scarce, they become more valuable relative to apples. Fewer bananas means that the price shift will be more severe each time one is removed. So again, if there's less of something and a higher demand, that's going to mean that the price appreciates. Agreed? If there's less of something and a higher demand for it, price appreciates. If there's loads of something and no demand, price is going to drop down. Simple economics 101. This shift in price is referred to as slippage or sometimes price impact. Depends on the automated market maker you are using, will depend on the terminology used. Yeah, a pool with greater liquidity, i.e. more fruit, can handle more trades with less slippage. So typically, the more liquidity in a pool, the better it is for those people swapping assets. Let's look at this so that you understand it again, use another analogy. If we've got our BNB and our Bitcoin, and we've got hundreds of thousands of both, yeah, in a pool, and we are trying to trade $1,000, no problem. We can trade $1,000 between them two. Now let's pretend we've got half of a BNB and like 0.1 or whatever of BTC or 0.01. Right, we can then say to ourselves, if we're trying to trade $1,000, it's going to have too much of a high price impact, or there's going to be insufficient liquidity for our trade. So the higher amount of those assets in there, it's better for us to be able to trade across. As soon as we start looking at very low liquidity pools, then the price impact on each of those assets is going to be significant. On most DEXs, including Lumenswap, and SDEX, providing liquidity requires depositing an equal value amount on a pair of two tokens in a pool. Some are different to this, but I'm not going to get into those. 50% in dollar value on either side is the way that Stellar is going to work when it implements this. When you add liquidity into an existing pool, the automated market maker will automatically determine the price ratio based on the current value of the tokens. It is an equation, and the inputs of the equation are the two assets you are putting into that pool. They're the inputs. And then it finds equilibrium according to the trades. If this one is sold heavy, right, so there's going to be more of them because they're selling, so we're selling these ones and more of them. And then this one's that it is going to reflect, okay? It's going to reflect because this one is being sold, so this one will be being bought, right? So you're selling from out of that one into this one will come down and this one will go up. Vice versa. If this one's being bought here, on this side, and this one's being sold, the bought one is going to be going off into wallets, and the sold one is going to be put into liquidity pool. So you're going to get this constant mathematical equation with the two inputs being the two assets, constantly balancing at all times. What are LP tokens? When you stake liquidity by depositing your paired tokens, it enters a pool, right? Which is a smart contract that includes the tokens of everyone else who has deposited. So let's just say we're using LSP, XLM, all of us are putting in a 50% of LSP, XLM. There's not someone coming in with another random token, we're all coming in with the same pair, but in different amounts. Some with $2,000 worth of it, $5,000, $500, $20, $10, $5. It doesn't make a difference. Stellar Network is so cheap. We can put in 50 cents of each if we want to start the ball rolling. Bearing in mind the 0.3% fees will be relative to your stake. If you put in 50 cents of each, don't be expecting 10 cents after a day. It's not going to happen, in fees. If you're only putting 50 cents on either side, it means you put in $1. But you may want to do that to get a feel for how it's working. As you get more confident, $10, $100, $1,000, right? So start small, learn the system, then it goes up. It's important, right, to keep in mind that LP tokens are placeholders. All they are is the LP token. When we put these two together and we get an LP token in return, all that does is it just tells us we have a stake in the pool. We then have to take the LP token and we have to put the LP token in terms of staking it into the pool so the pool recognizes that we have put it inside. It's no good for us to be going, oh, okay, we've got these two assets in our wallet, but we don't have, we're not doing anything with them, because then you will just get the ebb and flow of those asset prices sat in your wallet. You have to actually take them assets, make the LP token and put it into the pool. Right. So, since they're used for record keeping, exchanges typically do not display or track the value of LP tokens. Some do, some don't. I don't think Stellar will be. This would be like asking, what's the value of an apple and a banana, right? Rather than saying, what's the value of an apple? 10 pence. What's the value of a banana? 20 pence. Okay, what's the value of an apple and part thereof? So 7/8 of an apple and this, and it's like someone just looking at you gone out as if like, what are you talking about? Because obviously the assets are constantly fluctuating and the pool is constantly fluctuating in the amount of both. It's almost impossible for you to calculate that, okay, unless it's, as I said, an equation that it's pulling off and it's giving you that information. So for this reason, you may encounter some LP tokens with odd-looking values, such as 7 noughts after the decimal point and then 25. And you think, well, that doesn't look like I've got very much. But in actual fact, that could be worth $30,000, right? On the opposite side, it might be that you've got 200,000 of these tokens. You think, woohoo, I'm rich. And then you've actually got $1,000 worth of value. So it doesn't make any difference. It's all just as a record keeping of your stake within that pool. LP tokens typically carry initials that indicate their source, so it could be the fact that we have SLP, and that would be Stellar Liquidity Pool, right? Stellar Liquidity Pool. It might be the fact that you have LLP, Lumenswap Liquidity Pool Token, right? You get the idea. They're going to have an individual identity. Can I swap 2 tokens if there is no liquidity available? This is a good question. Maybe. There needs to be a path to connect the 2 pairs. On SDEX, on the Stellar DEX, all of liquidity pools will be basically, well, any liquidity pools will be available. So any 2 assets will be able to be paired together and put into the network because it will bring wider liquidity across the whole network, okay? So it doesn't make any difference which 2 you're putting together. I'm coming from a Lumenswap perspective, so Lumenswap and XLM will increase the ability for us to swap, right, those 2 assets very, very simply in much higher volume, right, than sometimes we would have if there wasn't those trades on the SDEX and we had too much of a spread. We would be like, okay, well, there's too much of a slippage here. We're not going to be able to do this trade for the price points that we want. Right. So now we will have a look at the pathways, okay? And this is sometimes called the route. And what this is let's just say we have a XLM and LSP pool, and then we have a Doggit and XLM pool, right? But we don't have a Doggit and LSP pool, right? So we have these 2 pools, but they both involve XLM, but they don't actually have the other 2 assets. Well, this will be a routing system, and this will then find, again, a smart contract, or on the SDEX, it will be built into the network, will find that pathway, that cheapest way from going from Doggit to LSP and back. So it will go through the XLM, so it can still be used. Doesn't necessarily have to be the liquidity of just those 2 assets, but it will find a path. And this is sometimes 3, 4, and 5 different assets that a swap will route through. Yeah, the pathway will route through those different tokens because there's liquidity in each of those different pairs. I hope that kind of makes sense to you, right? But it will become very apparent, very apparent as we move forward. So can I create LP pools by pairing any 2 tokens? Yes, you can. So yes, you can on the SDEX, any 2 at all. But remember this, you will only earn fees, your 0.3%, based on the trading of those 2 assets. Now let's just go really wild and say it's some kind of meme coin that's just been set up, and another thing is some sort of JPEG DAO that's brilliant, but it's in its early days. The fact of trading between the JPEG DAO and the meme coin, the people actually trading between those are probably going to be nil. There's probably going to be no fees generated. So by you providing liquidity in there, great, you've put your assets in there, but you're not going to get anything for it because it's only going to be based on the trades. So this is the reason why it's wise to choose the pools that have a large amount of trading volume. Now you can find the trading volume by looking at the market on the market tab, right, on Lumenswap. You can have a look and then you can click onto 24-hour volume and you can find which are the highest traded pairs on Stellar. And what this will then allow you to do is you can look along there and say, okay, this one's traded like fairly heavily. If people are then trading on the SDEX this heavily, they may well trade on the automated market maker this heavily, and it will make a lot of fees. I'm going to put my liquidity in there. And of course, when we look there, all the time we see LSP, XLM as one of the top traded pairs on the Stellar network. So it's going to make sense that you look at that as one of the choices that you have if you're providing liquidity. And let's not forget, there are dual rewards. So you're not just getting the network fees, the 0.3% if you're using Lumenswap and XLM, you are also going to be getting the rewards that used to be the trading rewards. You're going to be getting those as an incentivization for you providing liquidity with Lumenswap. So you can be in a dual reward system, right, yield farm system with Lumenswap. Come on to more of that. Okay, risks of becoming a liquidity provider. There is some risk of a bug or a vulnerability in a traditional sense. As I've already said to you, smart contracts, bugs, team, platforms, these are all risks. We don't have that, right, with the Stellar DEX when it incorporates automated market makers, because they're put in at protocol level. Okay, they're put in at protocol level, so you haven't got any risk about a team, any platform that's sat on top of it, any smart contracts or anything, because it's built in. Same as the SDEX is built in at protocol level, at L1 into the network. Okay, but what you do have as risk is you have impermanent loss. Right, impermanent loss is when the two tokens that you're putting in diverge. Right, so what I mean by that is that you are getting this, volatility in both assets, right, going up and down in prices. We're seeing, if you only need to have your blockfolio, as it used to be called, FTX as it's called now, or Delta Open, to be seeing crypto assets going up and down in value. If you're picking two of them and you're putting them two assets into your liquidity pool, you know that those assets are going up and down. So if you put 10,000 in today, just on token volatility, that could be worth 8,000, 7,000, 4,000 tomorrow, just on token volatility. Now, as soon as we start adding in the fact that there's an equation with the two inputs that is balancing and rebalancing the amount of each of the tokens in that pool according to the trades, we can end up with way more thousands of this one token and way less thousands of this valuable token, and then we're looking at impermanent loss. And impermanent loss is the difference to what your pool value is worth against what it would be if you kept them two tokens in your wallet as native tokens. You just held them, you didn't do anything with them. Now, if you just held them and they're both appreciated in value, then obviously you can sell them out for a profit. But if you have them in liquidity pool and they both appreciate in value, because one may have gone a lot higher than the other one, and it's not in ratio to the other one, then you could start looking at losing, even though they're both appreciating, against if you had just held them. And now this is amplified if the prices of them go down. If the prices of them go down, of course, people are going to be thinking, I need to sell, panic sell this one that's going down fastest, quicker. So you're going to get loads more of them in your liquidity pool token, right? Your little pot. You're going to get lots more of the devalued ones as people are selling. So people are selling their tokens into the pool, and as they're selling those tokens into the pool, the amount of tokens on the one side is massively increasing and the valuable ones is decreasing, and you've got this offset. The reason it's called impermanent is because unless you sell, you've not realized that loss. There is a chance in the future that the rebalancing will happen and this token will gain value again and they will appreciate up, and then you will be on the right side of the equation and you would have made profit and everything's fun and funky. However, in a lot of occasions that is not the case, and you stand a very real risk of losing assets. So you need to be very, very well informed before you go into these liquidity pools, that you know about impermanent loss, that you know about the risk associated with it. Of course, if you're holding two assets in your wallet, those two assets you're holding in your wallet, you are earning zero, in most cases, zero yield on. You are just doing what's called hodling, what we used to do back in 2017 and prior with the majority of our assets. We used to either trade them or we used to hodl them. That was it. There's a few staking opportunities, but that was generally it. And now we can have these assets in liquidity pools and be getting these fees on them. And we can be thinking, okay, do we want to just hodl or do we want to risk these assets and do we want to be getting some yield? In many, many instances, the yield that you can return from providing liquidity will, counterbalance the losses that you will make on impermanent loss. But again, this is strategic. You need educating on this and you need to know what returns you're looking at, what the APR is, what you're looking at per day, even per hour. You need to be understanding if tokens move in a certain percentage, how much are you going to be looking at in terms of impermanent loss? So how much loss are you looking at in percentage terms from your investment? And how much is the yield of the token going to provide you with? So how does it counterbalance? As long as you're looking at a profit, happy days. What you don't want to be happening is that you're looking at an impermanent loss, the tokens are being provided to you as a reward, and then you're looking at your tokens and thinking, that still don't cover it. So I'm still at a loss, and I'm up what I call upside down. Yeah, upside down on an investment means you're in debt on that investment. You've made an investment and actually it's costing you. Yeah, you are not profiteering from it. So that's everything I can really cover in terms of like a real basic understanding, of liquidity provision in this first video. I'm going to come on to emissions, I'm going to come on to rewards, I'm going to come on to impermanent loss a little bit more in the next videos. So I hope that, this first video has been enlightening for you. I hope that you're excited about learning about more. I will be incorporating maybe some visuals and incorporating some kind of different examples of this so that you can get your head into it before this starts. Okay, so it's not just going to be me talking, but in this first one I thought it's just good to get like a verbal understanding of what you're going to be looking at. Of course, any questions, put them underneath, because that's the way that I know whether you're getting that, whether this has been highly valuable to you or whether you think that this is off key or whether you think I should be adding anything. So any questions, put them underneath. I'll come back to you. I'll answer them questions for you, and we'll move on to the next topic centered around liquidity provision. So hopefully by the end of it, you guys are all going to be skilled up, raring to go, and you'll know all of the pros and all of the cons. Take care, everyone. Great to be with you, and I look forward to joining you in video number 2, centered around liquidity provision.